So now from here, we want to create a pivot table. Now, there's a couple of different ways to create a pivot table, and I'm going to show you two different ways. Now, the first thing is when we go to create a pivot table, once again, for a small set like we've got here, it's not really a problem in going and highlighting all the data, but I'll show you a quicker way of doing it. So if we go here and we go into Insert and Pivot Table. Now, my version of Excel is slightly different than what we use in class, so there is one small difference right here when we go to do a pivot table. So if I click on the Pivot Table button, the one that you will see in the lab will actually have a couple of other, we'll have three options up here that we're not seeing. It will say from a table or range, connect to an external source, or use the Excel Sheets data model. In my version of Excel, that does not have that, because that's actually all controlled right here. And so these are the options you'll have: table range, external data source, data model. We're going to come back to this data model. Don't worry about this from Power BI because that's not used in our lab. So from table range is what we're doing, and you'll notice that, okay, it's asking you to select stuff. So you can go in here and you can select what you want. That's fine. If it's a bigger data set, though, once again, especially if we're talking 10, 20,000 data points, it's kind of a pain. The easiest thing to do is just click on any cell inside of there, and then it's going to automatically go, oh, okay, you want to select all that. So now if I go into Pivot Table, and it's going to automatically fill in this from this table range, and you'll see single apostrophe, customer data, and exclamation point. That is the coding, what I'm highlighting right here. This is the coding that Excel uses to tell you what worksheet you're on. So if you see down here, that's the worksheet we're on. Great, all good. And this is going from A1 to J194. Great, that's what we want to select. That's fine. Typically, when I make a pivot table, I do a new worksheet. Now, what's this data model thing here at the end? We can have the Excel have a data model which will allow us to analyze multiple tables together, and this is actually an easy way to link up tables, which we are going to do here in a minute to show you how, because you will have to do it on your homework. Click on this right now, so that way we add the table that we're doing now to the data model. This is one way of doing it. We'll do it another way here in a second. And then I'm going to say OK. All right, and so we've created a pivot table. I know we don't see anything yet, but this is how we build things. So if you look over here, this by default, the table's name is range because we selected it with a range. We could change the name, but we're not going to worry about that. And notice all of these here: invoice number, customer's number, zip code, yada, yada, yada. If I go back to customer data, you'll see that these are the titles at the top here. So we've taken up all the data and rolled it up into the titles. Let's go back to our pivot table. Pivot tables are built with these four areas: filters, columns, rows, values. Rows and values are by far the most important. That's what we'll use the most. Let's start with values. Little summation symbol here. That's the uppercase sigma that is telling us we're going to be doing math. Basically, this is the data that we're going to have, and it's called aggregated. Aggregated is a fancy word meaning we've done math on it. So why don't we scroll down here. We'll grab, say, our margins. If I drag margins into values, one, you see it says sum of margin here, and I get a number that pops up here. What happened? It went and it took every single one of those 194 margin costs that we had, and it added them all up. Now, you can grab multiple things in here. You can actually grab multiple instances of margin and drop it in, and you can see we've got sum of margin, sum of margin 2. Why would we want to have multiples of margin? So we can change the aggregation. Two ways to do it. You can either click on the little triangle and go Value Field Settings, and then this allows you to change how you summarize it, how you show it. A lot of stuff to play with in there. That's great. Another way you can do it is if you right-click on the column, you can come down here to Summarize Values By. It doesn't give you all the options, but it gives you some of the most common ones. So let's say we'll do average. All right, so the sum of all of our margins was 2,800 for the days that we had, and the average margin of each thing was $14. Okay, That's great, that's fine, but we need more stuff to make our pivot table useful. That stuff is going to be the rows, how we're going to break things up. So if I go and I drag description and drop that in, now we have all the apples. Now if we go back to the customer data, you will see that there are different descriptions in here. I think there's like 12 or 15 instances of apple. So what it did is it went, okay, I'm looking for everything that's an apple, and I'm summing it all together. So all of the apples that we sold, $140. And then it goes, and it's averaging up all the instances of apple. So apples averaged $15.59. This is why pivot tables are great, to be able to go and look through data. And so those are the two big ones. I mean, that is the biggest thing that we use a lot of pivot tables for. Let's talk about the other two things. What are columns? Columns are the exact same thing as rows. It's just allowing us to look at data in columns instead of rows. Typically, I use rows for things like time. So I want to get rid of, let's get rid of one of these, and we'll get rid of the average. So I'm just going to click on it. I'm going to drag it out of the little pivot table field until you see that X, which is a way of deleting it. So I've removed that from the table. Let's go and let's grab date of sale and drag date of sale into the column. And so now you see that, hey, apples on 3/1/2021, we sold $36 of apples, and then 45, 15, 42 for that grand total of 140. So it's another way of separating out the data. And depending on how you want to use it, it can be different things. As I said, I particularly use it a lot for time. Okay, and so those are 3 of the 4 fields. We have the last one. What's that? Well, that's filters, and that allows you to filter the data. So in this case, why don't we grab zip code and drag it in, and now we can see this thing up here appears, zip code. What does this do? Well, we can filter it by zip code. So right now it's showing all. If I click on the down arrow and expand all out, it shows me all the zip codes. I have no idea where these zip codes are. They're just a bunch of zip codes for me. But just go and randomly pick one like 66402, highlight it, and then hit OK. And now you will see that our table is filtered to just show us what's happening in 66402. In this case, the only thing that happens is we made $5.71 selling boysenberries on the 1st of March 2021. Now, that's not the only way to do filters. In fact, I actually don't like using filters because there's a faster way of doing it, and it works better for me. But if filters is what you want to do and works for you, that's great. I'm going to get rid of filters. I typically don't use filters. Let's go here into the pivot table analyze field. We're going to insert a slicer. A slicer is what I like to use because it's a filter that's visual. And so we can sit here and go, okay, you know what? Where is my zip code? Say, okay, and now I have a graphical box here. And I can sit there and go, okay, there's my 66401. Sorry, 66402. And we saw that, hey, we only sold those 571 in boysenberries. Maybe you want to see what's going on in the 401. We can go do that too. This little paddle icon clears it. We can also set multiple filters here and go, okay, tell me, let's clear everything. And say, okay, well, I just want to know everything that we haven't highlighted. Or I can turn that off and then select one, turn that on, and then select another 3 or 4. And it should be, there we go. And it's showing me what's happening in just those ones that I filter. So this is the basics of pivot tables. During the homework, you'll play around a little bit with them. And pivot tables are kind of neat because we can dive into the data. There is also stuff that we can do. We can start connecting pivot tables up. And I will have another video just showing you quickly the basics of how to do it because it is something that's going to come up in your homework.